Welcome back to another episode of the Middlegame Series. In case if you're new here, my name is Ujjwal. I have a FIDE rating of 1814 and I've been playing chess for nearly a decade. In today's video, I'm going to show you a fascinating game where one side plays against a piece throughout the game, slowly restricting it, improving their position, and eventually converting that advantage into a win. This game is a perfect example of how deep strategic thinking can completely dominate the board, even without any crazy tactics or sharp calculation. So let's get started and understand what it really means to play against a piece. Okay, so the game is played between Baso versus Ankit from Katolika 2019. And yeah, let's begin. White opens the game with 1d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5. We have queen's gambit decline. Knight c3, and now we have dc. The Vienna variation, or you can say Vienna gambit. White played the move e4. So black is currently a pawn up, but in the exchange white is having the complete center control. Black develops the bishop to b4, and now white played the move bishop g5. So after bishop to b4, the knight is pinned, so black is preparing to capture the pawn on e4. But here there is a very fascinating variation that white can go for, which is bishop cross c4. And why it turns out white was actually considering this. After bishop cross c4, knight cross e4, white basically sacrifices a pawn and simply castles up. And to be true, if you're ever playing this variation with the white pieces, it's a very fascinating and it's a very interesting variation and you must try it. So after castle, let's say if the knight goes back, now there is queen a4 check, knight c6 is force, and now there is a very interesting game with knight e5 played between Magnus versus Duda from Vikings 2019, where Magnus simply outplayed Duda, and it turns out that white is simply better after knight e5. So let's say instead of knight e6, let's say if black goes for capturing the knight on c3, bc3, bishop cross c3. After rook b1, let's say castle. White is already winning after queen d3. The bishop goes back. Knight g5, threatening a mate on h7. Black tries to defend it with g6. Queen h3, once again threatening a mate, h5, and a g4. You can't take, mate is hanging on h7. Black can try e5, trying to pin up this pawn, but there is simply takes, giving up the pawn. Once again, you can't take with the pawn because h7 is mate. So bishop g4, and now simply queen e3. With e6 coming up on the next move, which is unstoppable from black, and white is completely winning. So that's why it turns out bishop cross e4 is a very interesting variation and you can definitely try it. But bishop g5, also a very finest move, another sideline. And now we have the move b5 by black, trying to protect the pawn on c4. And now we have a4 by white. Now you can definitely play the move e5. There is h6. You can go back, you can take. This is all part of a preparation. This is also a line, a sideline. You can definitely go for this. But white instead decided to play the move a4. And now we have the move c5. Now if black goes for playing the move c6, so it simply transposes into e5, h6, takes, rook g8, and now g3 with the idea of bishop g2, castle up. Black's pieces are sort of not developed as easy as compared to white. After castling up, white can even push the pawn to h4, and white is simply better. Instead we have c5, an aggressive approach. White takes the pawn on b5, black takes the pawn on d4, knight d4, and now we have h6. And now we have to move bishop cross f6. Now it turns out bishop e3 is also a very interesting move, and the whole idea here is first of all, after bishop e3, this game was played between Ding versus Carlsen in St. Louis 2019. And basically, if black goes for capturing the pawn on e4, the white can play the move with rook c1, queen c2, and white is still slightly better. Material-wise, white's having 5 pawns, black is also having 5 pawns. So yeah, definitely playable. But instead, white simply went for capturing the knight on f6, queen f6, and now we have bishop cross c4. So currently, white is a pawn up. Black castles up. We have castle by white. And now, in this position, white is a pawn up, but black has the pair of bishops. The bishop on b4 and bishop on c8. And white is not the one having the bishop pair. So basically, white's whole idea behind this game, which revolves around the b8 knight. Basically, the b5 pawn limits the knight on b8. So you need to play in such a way that you can simply not allow black to develop his b8 knight so easily. Let's say in the game we had bishop b7. Now rook d8 is met with queen a4, because after rook d8 it looks like black is simply attacking the knight on d4. Though it is met with queen a4, black takes the knight, white takes the bishop, you take the knight, I can simply take it back with the pawn, and the pawn defends the knight. So nothing is happening. So we have bishop b7, and now we have queen b3, and now we have the move bishop c5. So in this position, if black goes for capturing the knight on c3, takes and takes. Now many players would argue that, yeah, black has regained the pawn, but in exchange now you have lost the bishop pair, and you have given white a ton of advantage with rook e1 attacking the bishop. The bishop is forced to go back, and now there is tactics coming up, which is knight e6. Takes, rook takes, and this is simply completely winning. The queen move, and I can simply move my rook anywhere I want, and this is completely winning for white. So that's why bishop cross e3 is not going to work. So we have the move bishop c5, and now once again we have knight e6, a sacrifice. So basically white knew this idea, a positional sacrifice, and it was actually a novelty back there. After takes, bishop cross e6, the king moves, and now we have bishop d5. So basically white is having 3 pawns for a lost piece. After bishop d5, the bishop on b7 is hanging. So black played the move queen e7. Now the main move, at that time when the game was played around, I don't know the exact date, but the engines were not that strong as they were today. So basically the main move was queen e7, and basically it is black needs to find some precise move to be in the game, or else white can simply easily win the game. The best move is queen e7. The best move is bishop cross f2 check, which is insane. You can't really take the bishop because you simply get a mate by sacrificing the queen. So instead, white have to move the king, knight d7, and basically the bishop captures the bishop, and black is having knight c5 to regain the piece. The queen goes back, takes, and after knight d1, white can still go for capturing the bishop on f2. After knight d6, takes, queen e5. White is 2 pawns up, but you see all the 3 pawns are actually simply collapsing. Black is having 3 pawns, white is having 5 pawns, but according to the engine it's a draw. But definitely if humans are playing this, they can there is some humanly anything is possible, and white is definitely having the chance to win the game, or at least it's a draw. So this would have been the main move, but black played the move queen e7, and now basically black played this ambitious move, holding on to the piece, and now everything revolves around if black will manage to develop the b8 knight. So after queen e7, now white is also out of his preparation. So pause the video and understand this position very well, and try to find the move for white. How are you going to continue the position? And let me give you a hint, it's not about calculation, you just need to understand the position. Okay, so white played the move rook ad1. What's the idea? Basically, after bishop d5, queen e5, the knight can't be developed on d7, as thanks to the rook on d1, white can simply go for capturing the knight. And guess what? Black is also losing the rook on a8. So black played the move bishop b6. Now the idea is very nice. Black wants to play the move knight d7. You can't take the bishop on b7 because there is knight c5 attacking the queen and the bishop, which is a very nice move, a very sneaky move. So once again, try to pause the video and try to find the move. Okay, knight a4. The only move once again, and it's a very nice move. The idea is pretty simple. After knight d7, white can take, because there is no knight c5. I can simply capture the knight on c5. So once again, you can't really develop the knight. So black played queen c7. And now the idea is to develop the knight to d7, as bishop b7 is met with queen b7. So once again, try to pause the video and try to find the move. Okay, bishop b7, queen b7, and now queen e6, with the same idea of not allowing black to develop the knight to d7. That's it. Black plays the move bishop a5. And now this was not a good move. It's a very logical move, bishop a5, with the idea of attacking the b5 pawn. But actually the best move in this position would have been to play the move king h7. And it's a very precise move and it's a very logical move actually. Like with the help of the engine, king f7 is the best move, with the idea of playing the move queen f7. White plays e5, and now queen f7 would be a mistake. So like after if queen f7, now this would have been a mistake after queen f7, rook f7, knight b6, a b6, and there is e6. Now if you try to go for playing the move rook d8, once again trying to play against this knight, not allowing it to develop, black is having a very nice counterplay in this position, which is rook d7. The rook has to move, and there is rook d5. And basically black is going to capture the pawn and somehow get this knight out, and white is still slightly better, but according to the engine it can be holdable. It is holdable. Instead of playing rook d8, white can first play the move e6, the rook moved, and now rook d6. And you see the knight is not really having any square to go, the knight is simply blocked, and white is simply winning. White is simply better. So yeah, that's why queen f7 would have been a mistake. Queen e4 is the main line. Basically after knight c3, queen c2, king h1, maybe just taking some precautions of taking on f2. So king h1, queen b2, queen c4, king h8, because white is threatening queen e4 check and going to capture the rook on a8. So king h8, e6, knight a6, giving back the piece, rook c8, and there is knight f4. You move the queen, you lose the knight. So white is luckily having knight f4, takes, rook c6, and this is a draw. Once again white is 2 pawns up, but the e6 pawn is eventually going to collapse, and with the help of a good bishop on b6, it's once again 3 versus 2, but this is holdable, and yeah, it's a draw. But definitely white can still play on for a win. White can try. So that's exactly what happens. King h7 would have been the best approach. And now let's say if queen f7 direct, what's the big issue? If queen f7 direct, takes, and there is e5. You can't play knight e7 with the help of because e6 is coming up, you're going to lose. So rook e7, and there is a check. Rook king comes, f4, and once again this is completely winning for white. The knight can't move, the rook is hanging, you can't move the rook, the knight is hanging, and this is completely winning for white. Going back, that's why queen f7 would be a big blunder. So in the game we had bishop a5, attacking the b5 pawn, a very logical move. Rook d5, simply protecting the pawn on b5. Queen f7 now, and now queen f7. Queen f7 was the best move. Takes, rook d1, not allowing, once again playing against this knight. Currently knight d7 was a threat, so simply rook d1, that's it, stopping knight e7. King g8, and now playing the move. White played a very ambitious move in this position, which is e5. Looks very logical, you are trying to push your pawn, rook d7 is not really coming up, makes so much sense. But it was an inaccuracy. The best move was a very simple move. If you want to find it, you can find it, try to pause the video and try to find the best move. Okay, g3 would have been a very nice move with the idea of king g2 and just pushing the pawn. As after e5, black is having some counterplay, a little counterplay with in the game we had bishop c7, which was a mistake. The best move would have been rook f4, attacking the knight. Let's say the moment the rook goes for defending the knight over here, the king gets in with rook king f7, knight c5, bishop b6, knight d3, rook goes to c4, rook over here, bishop c5, takes, f4, and now king e7, the best move. You need to be sharp. You can't go for capturing the pawn on b5 because there is rook c1 and rook is getting in and black is losing. The knight is not really having any square to go. You have to play king e7. b6 is met with knight c6, rook a6, knight d8, and white is still better. Not an easy task though. Anything can happen. Yeah. So yeah, this would have been the best try, but Black played bishop c7, and now h4, a fine move. Rook e7. Now in this position, if rook f4, now this is winning for white now. This is not going to work this time because of e6. You can't take the knight, check, 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 the king move, push, rook here, I make the queen, and black is a piece up. But guess what? Neither of the piece can't move, and this is completely winning. Even if you try something like a6, I can even take, I can even push, everything is winning, you can't take, everything is hanging. So yeah, that's why rook f4 is not really going to work. So in the game, we have rook e7, we have f4, king f7, king f1. Now, king f1, a very nice move. King f2 is definitely possible, but white just wanted to keep the king on the light square because black is having the bishop of the dark square. So a very logical move, king f1, the king goes back with the same idea of developing the knight to d7. Here's my next question. Try to pause the video and try to find the move for white. Okay, so the move in this position, like in the game we had knight c5, which was a mistake. The best move in this position would have been to play the move rook c1. With the same idea, you can't develop the knight, the bishop is hanging. Knight c5 turns out to be a mistake, though it's a very logical move. You are once again stopping knight d7, but now black gets a bit of counterplay with bishop b6. So basically in this sorry, not bishop b6, but a6. Bishop b6 was a very logical move played by white's opponent, which makes absolute sense. But a6 would have been a very cleanest way, as after rook a1, there is rook a7, rook a4, bishop b6, knight takes, rook b7, and black is now finally getting finally ready to untangle his pieces, and black is absolutely fine. Black can move the bishop, and finally black can play some normal chess. But in this position, white is having 4 pawns for the piece, which is too much, and white is still better. But a6 would have been a very strong move. Bishop b6 was played, which is a very logical move. Knight e4, and now black played bishop c7, moving the bishop back, which was not a good move at all. But as you see, it's already move number 29. It's definitely a classical game, but both the players are in time pressure, as we can assume. So it's very hard to play. Though the best move would have been to play the move knight d7 now, as it looks very logical. Black can finally develop the knight. It is the perfect opportunity. But black got scared of this variation of knight d6 check, king moves. If king goes over here, knight f5 simply wins because of e6. So king f8 the only move, knight f5, rook move, e6. There is rook f5, knight f6, rook to d7, and it looks very scary because of the rook and the pawn. But there is rook e8, g4, king move because you can't take the pawn because of g5. King move, rook b7 takes g5, and after knight e8, it's a holdable possession. But obviously white can still push for sure, but it's not easy to calculate all this when you are under time pressure. So very logical approach, bishop c7, and now finally rook c1. Knight d7 can't be played because the bishop is hanging, the correct way to continue. King f7, rook c5, and now bishop e5. So basically the bishop is hanging, it's completely winning. If you try to move the bishop now, rook c8 is winning up, everything is collapsing now. Knight is sitting on d6, I can even start pushing the pawn on the king side, it's completely winning. So black tried a last chance with bishop e5, but after rook e5, rook takes, pawn takes, knight d7, rook c6, black took the pawn, and now rook a6. So white is a pawn now, but black is having absolutely zero counterplay. White's having very aggressive pieces. b6 is coming up, which is totally winning. Black tried knight c4, stopping b6, but here we have b3. The knight goes to b6, check, knight c4, and you can't take, I can simply take. You have to move you move the knight, I can push the b6 pawn, which is winning. So black played rook b8, but now takes, knight to d5, b6, and this is completely winning. So basically here white's opponent resigned because knight cross b6 is met with rook a6, pinning up this, and white is completely winning. So yeah, it was a very positional game. Even if there was a material imbalance, white found the best moves not by calculation. but just by logic, strategic thinking. And yeah, it was a very nice example. Now, giving you guys a quick overview of what happened in the game. It was a Queen's Gambit decline, turned out into, or you can say transposed into the Vienna Gambit, where Bishop C4 is also a very interesting line. You must check it out. I'm definitely going to make a video on it. So Bishop G5 was played, B5, A4, C5 takes, and here after reaching this position, now White is purely playing against the knight on B8. Bishop B7 got Queen B3, and founding this sacrifice, a very nice sacrifice where Black needs to find some only series of moves. It's very hard to play with the black pieces. Humanly, Queen E7 was played, Rook D1, and the whole idea revolved around the B8 knight, and that's exactly what White did. Gave no chance to Black to develop the knight to D7, though White definitely made some mistakes where Black at some points, 1 or 2 points, got the opportunity to develop the knight, but as it's human game, both the players were under time pressure. It's very hard to find the move. And finally, Rook C8 was coming up, which is completely winning. It's +4 or advantage. Maybe if we just wait a bit more, it is going to be +6. So Black took his chances, gave back the piece, but now this is not going to work up because White is a pawn up with very nice activity. It captured everything and simply won. So yeah, a very nice game, 40 moves, but definitely a very nice positional game. So I hope that this game was very logical, very understandable, and definitely if you want to improve your positional chess, this is a very nice example. Because you see, any move, like this game was not based on calculation, it was purely based on strategic thinking. Like White did not calculate 4 or 5 moves ahead, but just understanding the position that White just not wants the B8 knight to get developed, that's it. So White was making the moves to stop knight D7 throughout the game. That's it. So yeah, that was the game. I hope that you guys must have enjoyed this game. Learned something definitely. If you did, make sure to like, share, and smash that subscribe button. I'm going to see you soon. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.